I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
Word of mouth is a dangerous thing. To trust the opinion and taste of others is a good starting point when it comes to picking and choosing movies, but to get washed away in vitriol and the opinions of others can often tank a film before it even has a chance. This column, for example, is my opinion, and you are free to agree or disagree with it. It doesn't mean my taste in films sucks or that yours is the epitome of class, but it does allow me the unique opportunity to laud or condemn films that would otherwise be overlooked by many. 2015's Fantastic Four is a prime example of a film whose reputation precedes it and helped aid the film in becoming one of the biggest bombs in recent memory. But Josh Trank's revisionist superhero movie is an interesting failure in that it really isn't as bad as you may have been led to believe. I'm Alex Mady, and welcome to the Unpopular Opinion. Make no mistake, I am not saying that Fantastic Four is without flaws because it has several. The entire final act of the film is something of a mess, which is what Josh Trank's rants about the film pertain to, but the bulk of the movie is a well-structured take on a very familiar story. The 2005 version of the Marvel's First Family followed in the candy-colored footsteps of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films, which felt too cartoony for most audiences. This new take reinvents the characters in a film that is very low on superheroics and very big on horror. It would be better to compare Trank's film to the works of David Cronenberg, as this Fantastic Four is subject to a slew of transformations that would easily qualify as body horror. But this is also a solemn exploration of science and the potential dark side of genius. Just recently, Trank took to calling out his own film in an online review that did not delve into the production problems and rumors of his diva-like behavior. In his own words, he was expecting it to be much worse than it was. Having not watched the film since the weeks following its theatrical release, Trank should really not be so hard on himself. Somewhere, there is a Trank cut of Fantastic Four that likely gives us the true vision he intended to deliver to audiences. Only Trank himself and those involved at the studio and production levels know what really happened. But whatever it was ended up costing him the chance to helm a Star Wars movie, something that seems to be impacting many filmmakers who make movies that don't make enough money. With a shocking 9% on Rotten Tomatoes, Fantastic Four is an experiment gone awry, just like what befalls the characters. But by challenging the Marvel formula, Josh Trank made a movie that he should be proud of. As we heap proclamations of brilliance on what Tim Miller and Ryan Reynolds delivered with Deadpool, we would be remiss to not laud Fantastic Four for examining the pathos of superheroes in a light very different than the X-Men films or anything in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. With only the found footage film Chronicle to his credit, many were expecting big things from Josh Trank. When what he made didn't fit with the cookie-cutter expectations for the Fantastic Four, both 20th Century Fox and Marvel themselves threw the filmmaker to the wolves. It remains one of the highest-profile film disasters in recent memory, but the movie isn't that bad. In fact, after having watched the film several times, I actually regard it as one of the most intriguing and original superhero films in the entire genre. Trank brings a very gritty aesthetic to Fantastic Four, which may be the first thing to turn people off. He approached the project as if it were a low-budget independent film rather than the spectacle superhero films have all become. This is a slowly paced film, but that is deliberate in nature. Like Ang Lee's Hulk, Fantastic Four circumvents the traditional approach to adapting a comic book story by instead taking a dramatic deviation from what was expected. Like both Marvel and DC are apt to do, Fantastic Four feels more like a parallel take on the mainstream characters. If the title of the film had not been in any way related to a well-known comic book property, I am convinced it would have fared much better with fans and critics. At its core, this is an interesting examination as to how real people would act in such a unique and extraordinary circumstance. The timeline of the film is also very condensed. Starting with the prologue of Reed Richards as a child, the story quickly shifts to the development and creation of the portal to Planet Zero. There, Victor Von Doom is abandoned by his teammates while the rest return to Earth and deal with the horror of what their bodies have become. While the previous takes on the material have given the characters varying degrees of excitement and hesitation to their new powers, Fantastic Four makes these changes a curse and terrible burden. Even when Reed Richards escapes and leaves his friends behind to try and find a cure, the dynamic is shifted and forces the three others to turn on their leader. By giving the film a military aspect where the group is a government-controlled task force, the idea of them being weapons rather than heroes is a fascinating twist. The cast here is better than the material, but they still deliver despite the cumbersome changes to the script. Miles Teller is a solid actor who was unfortunately compared to his role in Whiplash, which many use as a way to trash his performance here. In fact, Teller does an admirable job of giving us what a young Reed Richards would have really been like if thrown into a situation like this. Michael B. Jordan is great as bad boy Johnny Storm, who gets to banter with his father and sister Sue, which is an element we have not seen in many superhero films. I thoroughly enjoyed Jamie Bell's take on Hank Grimm, but it is Toby Kebbell as Victor Von Doom whom I wanted to see more of. Sure, this is not the megalomaniacal supervillain from the comics, but this is a tortured man turned into a monster who should have stuck around far more than the film than he did. The production design of Fantastic Four is also something to behold. In complete contrast to the Tim Story-helmed movies, this is a bleak and dark film which spends more time on Planet Zero than it does on our own world. The alien nature of the deserted world gives us a physical depiction of what the inside of our heroes' bodies have been transformed by, and it exemplifies the transformation of Victor into Doom. The darkness of the movie never fully gets to come out as I imagine it did in Trank's cut of the film, and hints at elements that would have made this a potentially R-rated approach to the Marvel characters. The Fantastic Four never really become superheroes in this movie, but it sets the table for their powers to change the world had we gotten sequels. Fantastic Four also has a great score composed by Marco Beltrami along with Philip Glass. The soundtrack gives the film an eerie feel that accentuates the foreign and otherworldly qualities. The cinematography by Matthew Jensen makes great use of the dark visual of the movie and plays up the horror elements of the story. The problem in this film has nothing to do with what Trank made, but rather what the studio was expecting. Critical and demanding costly reshoots, any lackluster editing or special effects work comes at the cost of what could and should have been a phenomenal movie. Everyone involved have said as much, which begs the question why 20th Century Fox and Marvel had no idea that the movie was going to look and feel like Chronicle, since it came from the guy who directed Chronicle. 4 years after the movie hit theaters, Fantastic Four serves more as a footnote in Marvel movie history than anything. Trank's recent review has certainly ignited renewed interest in the film, and rightfully so. Since the movie premiered, the entire cast has continued to work steadily on screen, especially Michael B. Jordan, who has even been hinted at as a contender for a much more recognizable superhero role. But Trank hasn't released a film since. While he is in post-production on his Al Capone biopic Fonzo starring Tom Hardy, this single failure has tainted his reputation unfairly. Now, in the post-Disney era at 20th Century Fox, we will likely never see where these characters could have gone, as the inevitable MCU reboot is already in development. This is not the Fantastic Four we were expecting, nor is it the best take on the source material, but this is by far the most daring and distinct adaptation of any Marvel or DC property to date. With each change from the source material, be it the Mandarin in Iron Man 3 or the darkness of Batman vs. Superman, fans cry foul and decry the decisions of filmmakers and writers as being wrong or sacrilegious to our beloved comics. But the great thing about movies is that they don't all have to follow the same formula. I would love to see what Josh Trank's untainted version of Fantastic Four would have looked like, as the laundry list of studio-mandated changes are well known across the internet. The original version sounds like it would have been even further from the Marvel material and could have been a very good thing. Instead, we are left with this composite between the original and the revered source material, and it doesn't quite work the way that it should. But it is still an enjoyable alternative to every other superhero movie out there. But hey, that's just my unpopular opinion. Tell us yours in the comments below. I'm Alex Mady with JoBlo.com.